Welcome everyone to the Trans Day Visibility Trans-Masculine panel. I'm Pongo.
And I'm Essick.
Uh, I'm Zach, and today we're celebrating Trans Day of Visibility, and we'd like to share some trans-masc representation. But I guess first of all, what does it mean to be trans-masc?
Trans-masculine is an umbrella term that describes a transgender person who was assigned female at birth and whose gender is masculine or someone who expresses themselves in a masculine way. This includes, but is not limited to, transgender men, non-binary masculine folks. Someone who is trans-masculine can have any pronouns, regardless of how they identify or dress. Everyone's gender journey is unique to them. So next we're gonna go to why does representation matter? It's like, do you want to take this one?
Yep, I'll go ahead. All right. So the motto is you can't be what you can't see. So this is particularly important to when it comes to representation. So representation forms our views about our identity, our self-worth, and capabilities. It's inspiring to see people who look like you succeed, and it sends a message that you too can achieve the same. With a lack of representation on screen, or negative representations, such as the stereotypical characters, people can struggle with their identity or form negative perceptions of their own groups. So they might see their own identity or background as burdensome, unpopular, embarrassing, or even immoral. Whereas seeing someone like you being portrayed as successful, kind, or other good qualities would more likely boost your self-esteem, and it's hugely validating. Seeing relevant people in the media makes you feel proud of the people in your community.
Awesome. So for this next slide, trans-masculine folks throughout history. Being transgender is not a modern occurrence, despite what some people may think. Going back as far as 12,000 years ago, during the Neolithic and Bronze Ages, unearthed drawings and sculptures give us some insight into the early existence and depictions of potential trans people in ancient civilizations. In ancient Egypt, researchers found records of a transgender woman who was experiencing gender dysphoria in 1200 to 1194 BC during the 19th destiny of the New Kingdom. For reference, 1200 BC was 3,220 years ago. In Egypt, during 2000 to 1800 BCE, there was pottery that listed three recognized genders: Tai, T-A-I for male, S-H-T being a third gender, and I can't pronounce the full name of it, and HMT for female. Many people throughout history have recognized multiple gender identities, including Native Americans, Native Hawaiians, and many other cultures and communities. Now we're going to move forward into the 1800s, and we have Jack B. Garland that Zach's going to share.
Yeah, so Jack B. Garland was also known as the BB Beam, joined the U.S. Army in 1899. While accompanying the army in the Pacific theater of the Spanish-American War, he was discovered as having been born a female by the captain of his ship, um, and wasn't allowed to be to and wasn't allowed to board the ship again, but his fellow soldiers hid him on board until they were sailing away from Hawaii. So he spent some time in the Philippines working as a nurse and interpreter before returning to the U.S. And becoming an author. So he spent the rest of his life doing charitable organizational work. And I think, Pongo, you're talking about Dr. Alan Hart.
Sorry, I was just trying to unmute. So for Dr. Alan Hart, he was born in 1890 to 1962. And Dr. Alan Hart was born and raised in Oregon. As an adult, he sought medical assistance to help him transition and live as a man. Dr. Joshua Gilbert eventually performed a full hysterectomy on Hart to prevent pregnancy and stop menstruation. Although synthetic testosterone wasn't yet available, after the surgery, Dr. Hart went on to get married, publish several books, and have two medical practices. He is best known for his work, whose research helped diagnose and treat tuberculosis cases, lowering the death toll significantly. After World War II, Dr. Hart was able to begin hormone replacement therapy, which allowed his voice to deepen and facial hair to grow. And now we have Lou Sullivan.
Okay, so perhaps one of the more influential trans men of the 20th century. So Lou Sullivan was not only helped form a community for trans masculine people, but he also helped it make it easier for trans men to transition. So previously, being homosexual included trans men from receiving gender confirmation surgery. Lou fought this and made it possible for other gay trans men to obtain surgery services as a part of their transition. He began taking testosterone in 1979 and had genital reconstruction surgery in 1986. So he also founded the FTM International, which is an organization specifically devoted to supporting female to male individuals, and was diagnosed with AIDS after the same year. He died in 1991 from AIDS related illness, and today modern medicine allows people who are diagnosed to be undetectable for transmitting HIV and live long, happy lives.
And the last person on this slide is Wilmer Little Axe and Broadnax, who was an American hard gospel quartet singer during the golden age of the traditional black gospel. Broadnax began his career as a gospel singer during the teenage years with his brother William as a member of the St. Paul Gospel Singers in Houston in the 1930s. The two brothers moved to Los Angeles and joined the Southern Gospel Singers, of which Wilmer was a member of from 1939 to 1940. The group only performed on weekends and did not tour. Wilmer passed away due to domestic violence related injury in 1992.
All right, so I'm
Oh, whoops. Skipped on.
it's all right.
I mean, I can talk about this slide unless you wanted to chime in. I think we were missing but so one
No,
of
just
the
go for it, Zach.
things, yeah, one of the things that is often hard to find is just like records of people who are trans-mascs for various reasons, but there is record of them. So in one of it, Queer Archive Work is a really great organization that kind of collects old ephemera of things that are very like queer, and they have this kind of newsletter saved that's called Adam's World, which was published in 1989, and this was an FTM newsletter, which was used to connect with the community. Um, and like this keeps going on. There's way more stuff that you can find as well if you look a little bit more. So, for instance, in 1993, there's this another kind of newsletter called Gender Trash, and even back then they were talking about the same kind of things that we were talking about. So you can kind of see that they have in Gender Trash they have this page that's called History and Her Story. And they kind of cover the same things we did, like who are trans folks in the past.
Awesome. Thank you, Zach.
Cool.
All right, now we're gonna continue on with some more modern celebrities and influential people in the trans-masc community. So we're gonna start with someone that's pretty well known. You probably know who Elliot Page is by now. He came out publicly as trans-masc on social media, and he was the first openly trans-masked person on the cover of Time magazine recently. He's a Canadian actor who has been nominated for an Academy Award, 2 BAFTAs, and a Golden Globe Award for his role in Juno in 2007.
And then the person that I'm going to cover is N.D. Stevenson. So he's the creator, showrunner, and the executive producer of She-Ra, the new one that came out. He is also a writer and illustrator for the comic Nimona, which recently had an animation adaptation, and it was nominated for an Academy Award in 2024.
And a little bit different, Schuler Baylor is an athlete who became the first documented trans man to compete in Division I men's sports in the United States as part of Harvard's men's swimming team.
All right. And next, well, all right. So next is going to be Carl Clemens. I guess the picture's a little out of order. That's okay. So Carl Clemens Hopkins is an American actor best known for portraying Marcus on the HBO Max comedy drama series Hacks from 2021 until present day. They were nominated for the 2021 Primetime Emmy Awards for Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Comedy Series for the role. Clemens has acted in many plays as well. In 2014, they were nominated for a Barrymore Award for Excellence Theater, which honors Philadelphia area theater productions in the category of Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Musical for their performance in Little Shop of Horrors. And in 2016, they began performing as an original cast member in the new Chicago company of Hamilton.
Uh, there's also Ness Murby, and they're a trans Canadian athlete. So Ness Murby is a Canadian Paralympian who competes in the para athletics, men's F11 discus. So he is of dual nationalities, born in Australia, and became a Canadian citizen in 2014. So he was born with a congenital condition affecting his vision, and he competes in the F11 classification. In 2020, Ness came out publicly as transgender and became the first openly trans Paralympian. In May 2022, he made history as the first openly trans Paralympian to compete in the men's division. So he continues to train and compete in the men's division with the goal of getting to Paris in 2023 World Para Athletics Championships and in 2024 Paris Paralympic Games. So he said he would be the first openly trans man and Paralympian to do so. So he strives to carve out space for trans athletes to compete as their authentic selves.
Awesome. So next we have Danny Wakefield, and he is the first person pictured all the way to the left. Danny Wakefield is an influencer and transgender parent out of Portland, Oregon. Danny's blog says, I gave birth to my baby as a non binary person. I'm a trans dad, but I'm also queer. I'm also a dog lover, a world traveler, a photographer, a medium, a mentor, and a world sight seeker, and a speaker, an activist, and so many things. Danny blogged and posted on Instagram and TikTok about his pregnancy as a trans-masc non-binary person. They have also been open about being sober, raising a kid without gender, and transgender activism.
And the last person on this slide is Aiden Dowling, who is an American YouTuber, entrepreneur, model, fitness and life coach, and transgender activist. He began his YouTube channel in 2009 to document his journey taking testosterone experience as a transgender man. In 2015, Aiden was featured on the cover of FTM magazine, and won the Reader's Choice Award in the 2015 Ultimate Men's Health Guide, and was featured on the special edition cover in November 2015. He was the first transgender man to be featured on the cover of Men's Health. He was also featured on the covers of both Gay Times magazine and In magazine in 2016. Recently, Aiden Dowling has put out a free app on iOS and Android phones, the Trace app, which helps trans people track their transitions with photos, videos, voice tracking, notes, HRT reminders, and sharing with friends and community about their progress. Aiden wanted a space to help people keep track of their transition and bring positivity to it.
All right, so Freddie McConnell, you might know him from the Seahorse documentary and his nonprofit. Freddie McConnell is a transgender activist and a parent who advocates about transgender pregnancy and parenting. He was in a documentary about his birth of his child, and he is also known as an Instagram influencer. He runs a nonprofit for trans families who face discrimination.
Another person who I guess isn't pictured on the slides here, I have a feeling there might be some missing, is a deaf trans man. Shellaman is a deaf trans man who starred in Jericho, as Jericho, a deaf mutant in the recent DC Universe animated show. Also known as a model and as an influencer.
Okay. And the next we have is Caden Coleman. So he is a trans dad influencer and activist. So Caden is a POC transgender influencer and activist, and he is also a seahorse dad. He advocates on trans parenting, BLPOC issues, living with HIV, and he educates folks on transgender terminology. So Coleman has been interviewed by news outlets such as USA Today, Today.com, and Out about his experience with transgender pregnancy. And in 2021, he was honored by Out as an Out 100 honoree, a recognition given to prominent members of the LGBT community for their outstanding work promoting LGBTQ plus rights, and he has appeared in a commercial for Lexus. Caden currently offers workshops, sensitivity training, consultations, speaking engagements, and online brand promotions that seek to educate the public on transgender fertility, medical racism, pregnancy, disability awareness, and of course, parenting.
Okay, the next person we have is Braxton Flemings. Braxton is also currently not pictured here, but looks like 1B is going to step in and get us the pictures we're missing. So thank you, 1B. I appreciate it. Braxton Flemings is an entrepreneur and founder of Stealth Bros and Company. It's dedicated to creating beautiful kits and carrying cases for your HRT gear. In September of 2022, Flemings became the first openly transgender man to pitch on the TV show Shark Tank, bringing national attention to his brand and landing a deal with the Sharks, Barbara Corcoran, and Mark Cuban. As an entrepreneur, Flemings has been a lighthouse for other trans entrepreneurs, using his platform to uplift trans voices and experiences. All right, before we get to the next slides, looks like 1B is gonna put back in the PowerPoint for us. Thank you, 1B.
Thank you, 1B.
Thank you, 1B.
All right, almost there. Here's the next slide. There we go.
Yay.
Thank you so much. All right, so now we're gonna share some personal representation. Essick, me, and Zach are gonna go through some of our own personal representation of our transition as well as future goals. Oh boy.
It's fine. I mean,
Technical
we
difficulties. We're good. I'm sure y'all know what you
that's
said if
typical.
we can't get to it.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. It's not an event without an
trans-masc.
issue, right?
Yeah. I mean, we can talk about ourselves, like,
Yeah, just go for it.
sure. I mean, I can kick
Whoever's comfortable
off, I guess.
starting.
I can go for it. Yeah. So I guess
There we
I
go. There's
think
a slide.
I'm the oldest, maybe.
I think so.
Yes, I think that's
Yeah.
accurate.
Yeah. So I guess I'm currently 29 years old. I'm currently a designer for VR. Working at Wave, which is a company that does virtual concerts. And I've been in the VR industry as a designer for close to 7 years now. And I guess because I did mention my age, I'm 29. And yeah, kind of growing up, I feel like I was your traditional like emo child. I went through a very heavy emo phase. Lots of angst, a lot of it definitely gender based, but also just general angst. Um, and I moved to college where I was stealth for a whole total of maybe 1 semester, maybe less than that. I don't know. I'm very bad at like keeping secrets. I just talk a lot and then reference something and oops, suddenly I've outed myself. So I'm not very good at hiding things. I also was very luckily also at art school, so like it wasn't really that big a deal. I was one of the first folks actually to go through like having like a preferred name in the system when I went through college. So I had like my email and stuff with like my name on it rather than like my dead name, which was really cool. And like I appeared on like class lists as that as well. Um, and yeah, career-wise, for me personally at least, um, I've I've been very lucky. I got a lot of good connections during school, so been very lucky in that I don't really have to hide really being trans in the workplace. I'm also not the only like trans person at many of the companies that I've worked at. Um, and yeah, I mean, I guess like what's next for me? I may not have told my employer this yet, but I did apply for grad school. And maybe looking to do that because I think in the future, one of the things I'm really excited about is being able to teach at the college level. Um, because teaching is something I'm very passionate about. I've done talks at a lot of colleges, universities, conferences, just came back from one. Um, and yeah, I do think it's important for me to be, I guess, like trans representation that isn't necessarily like stealth about it because I'm comfortable being that person. So, the more that I can do to like be in a place where like I'm talking about things I'm passionate about, it has nothing to do with my gender, but I'm still there I'm still showing people that they can do these things that they're passionate about is really important to me. And eventually I do want to go into like more management positions in companies. Currently, like I'm a designer, I'm very hands-on with like making things. Um, or telling people to make things. But eventually, I do want to get up to like more management positions, being able to like make bigger decisions, being able to be like representation at like top levels of companies, not just folks at the bottom, which generally tends to be how it is in a lot of companies that do have trans representation. So yeah, that's me.
All right, I guess I'll go next. I'm Pongo, as you probably know by now. For my future, I'm planning on staying on HRT. I came out in around 2015 to friends and then family in 2016. And I started HRT in 2019. Got my name legally changed in 2017. And moving into the future, I'm possibly getting some type of surgery. Haven't decided yet, but I'm looking at all my options. And as for some other goals other than HRT, I'm hoping to meet a partner, have a family, just live my life to the fullest. Um, and I'm going to continue volunteering as an LGBTQ advocate and activist. Being that out and open person, like Zach said, is very important. I'm not usually stealth unless it's a safety concern in a particular situation. I'm usually out and proud as a trans man going about my life. Um, but I think casual representation is important, right? Just being me and going about life, and I just happen to be trans. Yeah, and Essick, if you want to share about your future next.
Oh, certainly. So, hello everyone. My name is Essick. A little bit about me. Zach, I know you said that you were the oldest, but I'm in my mid-30s, even though I
Okay.
don't sound like it, but I promise that I am. I am in my mid-30s. I was questioning my gender, I want to say, like, all the way back since I was a little kid. But I could have only have done something about it until I went into my college years, specifically when I went into university and I was able to go away to college, just uh, 2 hours away from my house. Like nothing too drastic, but ironically enough, moving to a bigger city, you meet more diverse people, more people that are just like you, right? So for the first time in my life in like 2014, I was surrounded by other fellow trans people, and I was like, oh wow, I could be out and I can be queer and I could be myself as I see myself. And then shortly after that, in 2015, I went on testosterone. 2016, I had my legal name change, so I would be officially Essick. So specifically, what do I want to do in the future? So transition-wise, I am currently consulting to get my top surgery. So in other words, looking at doctors, for top surgery. I am trying to grow my hair longer. So uh, I did that thing that a lot of young trans-mascs do, where the beautiful buzz cut,
Oh yeah.
rocking the yes, yes. So I am just allowing my hair so I could, have nice, a little bit longer hair that, looks
Mhm.
natural and fitting to me, as I don't, even though I did go on T and I am wanting to get surgeries, I, want to be my own man, however that may look. And after top surgery, I'm thinking about getting chest hair implants once that gets all finalized. The future for myself professionally. Right now, I am currently a marketing person and I do graphic design, but it's mostly freelance. My real dream is to uh, work for an international company or a big firm, and this will be, of course, after I currently finish up my major in grad school, which is video game design. Yep.
So for this last one, any of us can chime in. But basically, being your own representation is very important. So some people come out on social media, and like me and Zach had mentioned before, like if you're comfortable being self, that's really important. To show other people and be that elder in the community, to be that representation for the next generation of trans folks. And that's part of what I enjoy doing here at Trans Academy as a staff member, in the trans-masc channel, as well as, hosting game nights here. Being a good role model to the younger trans folks is very important. Um, and I
Yeah,
really enjoy it.
yeah. I think like being a good role model in general is like even to non-trans mask folks is also really important. Kind of
Hmm.
being, just be yourself and like be your own representation because the more like we can normalize like, yeah, like I'm trans, but I'm like so cool for all these other things as well. Is
Exactly.
super important. Um, for me, like I I personally like never really even had to like come out on social media or anything like that. Because I don't know, I've just been very overt. Like my LinkedIn profile photo is me against the trans flag holding my cat. Like I'm very much not at all stealth. But I am also like very privileged in the fact that I really don't have to be. I mean, the last couple of jobs I've had, I've been reached out to rather than like actively applying, which is always like really nice to see. Um, and yeah, being just like that good role model of just like I am very good at what I do, and
Hmm.
like you shouldn't question my capabilities before like knowing who I am as a person just because you know this one thing about me.
Exactly.
And I mean, kind of related to that is also just like it's also important for me to volunteer or like kind of donate or really help run trans spaces or even trans friendly spaces. Um, right now I host like a monthly queer art get together where I like basically run it completely for free. Just to like show people new ways of making things, and also to form community where people get to meet each other who have like similar interests as them, in places that aren't like your typical like gay bar or like very kind of like more adult spaces, that tend to be like high
Hmm.
key or related to parties. So having like for me being like volunteering, donating to trans spaces that are in like way more chill, way more diverse, way more open to other folks is important.
That is.
Mhm. And I just wanted to touch up and touch on another thing too that you could do is like also just being like a good ally or even just a shoulder to vent to your other fellow trans masks because it's tough, sometimes, with the media and everything saying like, this is what a man should be, or this is how we should act and dress and whatnot. There's a lot of pressure, right? Like to be a certain type of man, and and where in reality trans masks, should be what they feel is their authentic self and be there, for the people to show up as themselves, I think is extremely helpful.
Yeah, definitely. And I also think like so this extends to things that aren't also like related to being trans as well. So I actually was, as I mentioned, like I just got back from a conference, and one of the like kind of talks or roundtables that I went to really emphasized like the fact that like if there's somebody like who is trans in your workplace or trans-masc in your workplace, and they say something that you agree with in a meeting, just be like, yeah, like I agree with like so and so. I agree with Pongo. I agree with Essex. And because
Mhm.
I think that agreement really helps in the room of just being like, yeah, like let's reaffirm this person like does have good ideas. We're not going to overlook them because that happens way too often. Um, and also like it's kind of important to also be open to just hiring trans people and promote them as well once they're in. As I mentioned earlier, one of the big problems that I see a lot in like just industry or really any kind of industry where trans folks have like representation, it's very common that trans folk like may get hired to be like entry level or whatever. Um, but they may not actually be promoted. So they're like as you go upwards in management, as you go upwards in like the organizational chart, trans representation, especially trans-masc representation, tends to disappear. Um, so yeah, being able if you're ever in like a position where you are like able to promote or able to hire, just keeping an eye out for that and being like, yeah, like if someone comes across my way, like, is there a good reason not to do this? And if there isn't, like, just hire them or promote them.
Yeah, that's very important. I mean, not only is it discrimination to actively
Yeah.
not hire someone based on their
Mhm.
gender or identity, but also like how we said at the very beginning, what you don't see, like whether it's on social media or in person in like a workplace setting hierarchy, what
Mhm.
you don't see, you can't really be, right? And so it's important to have people in power look like us, people on TV look like us. And that goes for all aspects of life, right?
Yeah.
So when little kids are growing up and they see adults doing all these cool things, they can say, hey, I want to do that. I want to be a teacher or a
Yeah.
CEO or an actor, and I can do that as a trans person. I can do that regardless of if I'm trans or not. And there's
Yeah.
not that barrier.
Yeah. And I think we do struggle, especially Transmax folks, with like having very visible elders. Um,
Hmm.
because I mean, I would say like I also started T in like 2015 and like had top surgery in 2018 and all of that, and like that on my, like timeline wise tends to put me in the much older camp of trans mask folks that like tend to show up at like trans events or
Mhm.
Exactly.
things like that. So I'd be kind of considered like an elder at that point. But I'm honestly not that old. Like none of us are really that old. Um,
Yeah, I'm
so
26.
yeah.
Yeah.
We don't really have elders a lot of the time in the sense that we usually think about them. So, like, as we, I guess, like progress through our careers and stuff, like, it is important to be those elders because we have to kind of start building that history more and more. Because even if
Exactly.
there are elders, we just don't really talk about them or we don't really like have record of them as much. As I mentioned, it was really hard to find like archives from like even just like the 80s or the 70s about like what were trans mass people doing back then. Um,
Yeah.
Mhm.
so
When I was
yeah.
doing this research and looking throughout all of history from, like I said, ancient Egypt times, whether it's AD or BC or all the way up until modern day, like Elliot Page, I struggled to find anything, before 1800s. I struggled significantly. I was looking through so many websites, not just, the basic Wikipedia or Google search, but really diving deep to see, okay, what do friends and family know? What do other people on social media know and blog posts? Is there anything for trans mass representation? And the few things I did find were not very detailed, unfortunately. And the few things I did find were mostly white, able-bodied people as well. So that was really disappointing. I love, intersectionality is important. Finding trans mass
Mhm.
representation that shows different stories is very important. And so we tried to reflect that here in the PowerPoint in our panel as much as possible. But unfortunately, there was not a lot of options for stories.
Yeah, and I also think like something that's true of kind of like of all queer stories is a lot of the history tends to be very sad history. So like the more that we can do to, I guess, write more positive history is always really awesome.
Hmm.
Like
So that,
trans stories don't have to be sad stories.
Yes, exactly.
yeah, because it could be stressful too, not even as, a young person, but even as an older person, if you just see sadness all the time, where's the empowerment? We've been here literally like as, our PowerPoint that Pongo has so nicely put together is like we've been around since like the dawn of time, really. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it would make sense to have positive, empowering stories.
Yeah, and unfortunately, like a lot of written history has a lot of issues, which I won't get into that anymore.
Yes,
But I'm
yes.
definitely disappointed about it. A lot of that. But yeah, I spent a lot of time putting this PowerPoint together. Um, and I'm losing my train of thought. But basically, if anyone has any questions or things like they missed in the PowerPoint, 1B, if you want to go to the next slide, um, if there is one. Um, Thank you, thank you. So, this is the end of our presentation, but it's not the end of our representation, right? So, if you missed anything or you want to learn more about particular topics that we talked about, stories or anything, you can, ping me or Essick in the trans-masc channel. Start that conversation, right? We're on Discord. And like I said earlier, we host Trans-masc Game Night, so that's pinned at top as
Yep.
always. You can also rewatch this live stream on Trans Academy's Twitch later. So this was live streamed and it's going to be posted. We also have a YouTube channel where we post things as well. So if you missed anything, you can go back, see the photos, see the stories, and we can continue this wonderful conversation of trans-masc and transgender representation as a whole, really.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I'm not one of the admins or volunteers, but I'm pretty easy to find, and I'm also in the channel. So
Thank you, Zach. Thank you for joining us.
Yep. Thank you so much, Zach.
yeah, thanks for having me.
Esik, any last thoughts?
I would say mainly, in closing, it can be scary, right? To out, and it can be scary to, um, feel like nobody has. But at the end of the day, we all have each other, and you have support, and
Mm,
you need to do what makes you feel safe and what makes you feel comfortable. I feel is like the main thing that I
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
want to get across. It. Also, you
And
are
one more,
valid as well.
of course. And feel free to reach out to me or Esik in the channel. We're always willing to help if you need resources or any trans-mass specific support. I'm always on Discord like every day or VR chat myself. Also,
Yeah,
I
we
wanted
kind of
to
have to
mention we're
be.
still, oh yeah, exactly. This is a like full-time volunteer position, unpaid, but I am more than willing to be on every single day because I love the community. I love helping, the next generation of trans kids. It's really fulfilling and it really makes me happy to be a part of this community. I love all of you. I've made so many friends here. Going forward,
Mhm.
we are still looking for more trans mass staff members. So if you are 18 and over and an adult and you have some free time to volunteer unpaid and you want to work with me and Essick and all of our other lovely volunteers here at Trans Academy. You don't have to be trans to be a staff member, but we are looking for trans-masc specific support if you wanted to be in the community staff member role. We are looking for other roles as well that was posted in the notices, but specifically trans-masc support to run events like me and Essick have been. So you might in the future be doing panels or hosting trans game night with us. If you're interested, fill out our staff application that's posted in notices, or you can ask one of the staff members for the application.
And you could
It
be as
looks
cool
like
as
this is
Pongo and Essick.
yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
It looks like this is about the end of our